Her footsteps, hesitant yet resolute, echoed on the dusty path, each crunch a silent punctuation mark in the grand, unwritten epic of her life. She was a freedwoman, a whisper of a promise carried on the wind of emancipation, arriving at the cusp of a new chapter, a new sorrow. The world had just begun to unfurl itself before her, a vast, daunting tapestry woven with threads of uncertainty and the lingering shadows of a past she desperately sought to outrun. She had journeyed for weeks, the distance a physical manifestation of the chasm between who she was and who she yearned to become. Her heart, a fragile thing, battered by the storms of yesterday, still clung to a flicker of hope, a beacon in the form of a man whose promises had once felt as solid as the earth beneath her feet. He had spoken of a shared future, of rebuilding, of a life free from the chains that had bound them both, albeit in different ways. His words, etched deep into the fabric of her memory, were a melody that had sustained her through the darkest nights. Now, as the ramshackle silhouette of his homestead emerged from the heat haze, a strange quiet descended upon her. It was not the peace she had anticipated, but a premonition, a cold tendril of doubt that snaked its way around her chest, tightening with each laborious breath. The air, thick with the scent of dry earth and distant cooking fires, seemed to hum with an unspoken truth. She clutched the worn satchel closer, her knuckles white, a silent prayer forming on her lips, not for a miracle, but for the strength to face whatever lay beyond the weathered wooden gate. The sun beat down, an indifferent observer, casting long, stark shadows that seemed to stretch and distort the familiar landscape into something alien, something ominous. Every rustle of leaves, every distant dog's bark sharpened her senses, preparing her for an unveiling. She had come seeking solace, a home, a refuge, but the stillness that greeted her felt less like an embrace and more like a held breath, a moment before the world tilted on its axis. The hope that had fueled her long journey now felt like a dangerous illusion, a fragile butterfly about to be crushed by the weight of an inevitable reality. She walked forward, one foot in front of the other, each step an act of sheer will towards a destiny she could not yet comprehend, but instinctively knew would alter the very course of her existence. This was the moment of arrival, not just at a place, but at the precipice of an unforeseen truth. Before we get into this tale, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And subscribe if you want more content like this one. The scent of honeysuckle, usually a balm, now seemed cloyingly sweet, a mockery of the bitter taste that suddenly coated her tongue. She paused at the edge of the clearing, hidden by a gnarled oak, its branches like skeletal fingers reaching towards a sky that was deceptively blue. What she saw unfolded before her eyes was not the reunion she had envisioned, not the embrace, not the whispered words of welcome. Instead, it was a tableau frozen in time, brutal in its clarity. There he stood, Marcus, the man who had promised her a future, his arm draped around another woman, a woman whose face was pale and unfamiliar, her laughter light and carefree, a sound that pierced the fragile shell of the freedwoman's hope. They stood close, too close in the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, their proximity a stark declaration that required no words. A sharp, almost physical blow struck her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. The world, which moments before had held the promise of renewal, now fractured into a million shimmering pieces. Her breath hitched, a silent sob trapped in her throat, her gaze wide and unblinking, fixed on their intertwined figures, not out of curiosity, but out of a perverse need to confirm the treachery, to sear the image into her memory so that she could never again be fooled by the ghost of a promise. The woman, younger perhaps, her dress a vibrant splash of color against the muted greens and browns of the yard, leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder with an easy familiarity that spoke of shared moments, of a settled domesticity that was supposed to be hers. Marcus, his head thrown back in a laugh, a sound she once cherished, now seemed alien, a cruel echo of a love that was never truly hers. The ground beneath her feet felt suddenly unstable, as if the earth itself conspired against her, threatening to swallow her whole. Her fingers curled into tight fists, nails digging into her palms, a desperate anchor in a reality that spun wildly out of control. Then, from the periphery of her vision, small movements registered. Two children, a boy and a girl no older than 7 or 8, played near the well, their laughter echoing the woman's, yet somehow purer, untainted by the betrayal that hung heavy in the air. Their faces, though indistinct from this distance, bore a striking resemblance to Marcus, a confirmation perhaps of a truth she had not dared to consider. And then a horse, a magnificent dark mare tethered to a post near the barn, lifted its head, its intelligent eyes seemingly fixed on her, even from across the yard. It let out a soft whinny, a sound that seemed to cut through the oppressive silence of her shock. The horse's gaze, steady and knowing, felt like an unexpected comfort in the maelstrom of her pain. It was a silent witness, a stoic observer in a drama that had just begun to unfold, pulling the curtain back on a deceit woven with meticulous care. The image burned, leaving a scar on her soul before a single word was spoken. The pain was a dull throb, a relentless drumbeat against her temples, but it was nothing compared to the sharp, insidious sting of memory. Her mind, betraying her desperate need for oblivion, replayed fragments of a past that now felt like a cruel deception. She had met Marcus during those turbulent liminal years, a time when the world was shedding its old skin, ragged and raw. He had been a man of quiet intensity, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of unspoken burdens, a resonance she understood intimately. He was a freeman, but his freedom, like hers, was a fragile thing, constantly tested by the prejudices that still clung to the fabric of society. Their connection had been forged in the shared furnace of hardship and the fervent hope for something more. He had spoken of land, of planting roots, of a future where their labor would yield not just sustenance, but dignity. His words had been a balm to her weary spirit, a promise of a haven where she could finally rest, truly rest, after a lifetime of relentless toil. She remembered the way his calloused hand had felt against hers, a silent pact made beneath a sky streaked with the promise of dawn. He had admired her strength, her quiet resilience, her unwavering spirit in the face of adversity. He saw beyond the scars, beyond the exhaustion, to the very core of her being, or so she had believed. He had spoken of a small homestead, a place where they could build something together, brick by brick, dream by dream. He had sketched out plans in the dust with a stick, plans for a small cabin, a garden, a stable for the mare he promised to acquire. These were not grand illusions, but grounded aspirations, rooted in the hard earth, promises whispered in the quiet of night, under a canopy of indifferent stars. She had given him her trust, a precious commodity, earned through bitter experience. She had invested her meager savings, the coins carefully hoarded from years of arduous work, into this shared vision. It was a gamble, yes, but one she had taken with a full heart, believing in the man, in the dream, in the unwavering conviction that they were building something real. She had endured weeks of travel, the gnawing loneliness, the constant threat, all sustained by the imagined embrace, the whispered welcome home. The road had been long, each mile a testament to her resolve, her unwavering belief in the sanctity of their unspoken vows. She had pictured his face, the smile she had come to cherish, the light in his eyes that had once shone only for her. Now, that light was directed elsewhere, illuminating a different woman, a different life. The irony was a bitter pill. She had found freedom from physical chains only to walk headlong into an emotional one, a bond forged in faith and shattered by deceit. His ambition, once a shared beacon, now felt like a personal betrayal. This wasn't just about a man and a woman. It was about the desecration of a sacred trust, the unraveling of a dream built on the foundation of her vulnerability. The memories, once precious, now felt like shards of glass, each one cutting deeper into the open wound of her heart. The air vibrated with an unspoken tension, thick and suffocating. The freedwoman emerged from the shade of the oak, her presence a silent, undeniable question mark in the idyllic scene. Marcus's head snapped up, his laughter dying on his lips, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then a flicker of panic, like a trapped animal. The other woman, her name unspoken, turned slowly, her carefree smile dissolving as her eyes met the freedwoman's. A cold comprehension dawned in her gaze, a dawning awareness of the complex, unspeakable narrative she had unwittingly stepped into. The children, sensing the abrupt shift in atmosphere, stopped their play, their young faces mirroring the sudden unease that had settled over the yard. The only sounds now were the distant chirping of crickets and the frantic beat of the freedwoman's own heart, a drum roll to an impending storm. Marcus took a hesitant step forward, his mouth opening then closing, words failing him. His face, usually so composed, was a mask of conflicting emotions, guilt, fear, and something else, something she couldn't quite decipher, but which stung nonetheless. The silence stretched, an eternity compressed into mere seconds. She looked at him, not with anger, not yet, but with a profound, aching disappointment that transcended any outburst. Her gaze was a quiet accusation, a testament to the broken promises that lay scattered between them like shattered porcelain. The other woman, pale and visibly uncomfortable, shifted her weight, her eyes darting between Marcus and the new arrival, a silent plea for explanation. She was a bystander, yet irrevocably entangled in the wreckage. "Marcus," the freedwoman's voice, when it came, was a low murmur, barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the oppressive stillness like a sharpened blade. It was not a question, but a statement, heavy with the weight of her journey, the burden of her hope, and the crushing reality of his betrayal. Her eyes, usually soft, now held a glint of steel, reflecting the pain she refused to let consume her entirely. He flinched as if struck. He searched for words but found only hollow excuses forming on his tongue, unspoken and useless. The children, drawn by the silent drama, edged closer, their small hands clutching at the skirt of the other woman, their wide, innocent eyes fixed on the freedwoman, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in the adult world. Their presence was a cruel irony, a living testament to the life he had built without her. The air crackled, charged with the unsaid, the understood. This was not a lover's quarrel. It was the collision of two separate realities, a painful reckoning under the indifferent gaze of the afternoon sun. The horse, still tethered, whinnied softly again, a restless tremor passing through its powerful frame, its gaze unwavering. The children, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, became an unexpected focal point. The little girl, her face streaked with dirt from play, slowly detached herself from the other woman's skirt. Her gaze, curious and unafraid, fixed on the freedwoman. She took a tentative step, then another, a small, courageous advance into the contested space. The boy, initially more hesitant, watched his sister, then, as if an invisible thread pulled him, followed suit. Their simple, direct movement was a stark contrast to the adult's convoluted dance of betrayal and denial. The freedwoman, despite the turmoil raging within her, found her attention drawn to them. Their innocence was a fragile thing, easily bruised by the complexities of the adult world. Yet in their eyes, she saw not judgment, but a nascent curiosity, a glimmer of recognition. It was then that the horse, the dark mare, whinnied again, a longer, more insistent sound this time. It tugged at its tether, its powerful neck arching, its intelligent eyes still fixed on the freedwoman. Its restlessness was palpable, a restless energy that seemed to mirror the unspoken chaos in the yard. Marcus, distracted by the children's approach and the horse's unusual agitation, turned from the freedwoman, his attention fractured. He made a move towards the children, a paternal instinct perhaps, but they recoiled slightly, not from fear, but from an almost imperceptible discomfort with his sudden tension. It was as if they sensed the falsity that now permeated his very being. The little girl, with an almost uncanny intuition, reached out a small hand towards the freedwoman. It was a gesture of unburdened curiosity, a child's direct engagement with a new presence, devoid of the adult's baggage. The freedwoman, her heart aching yet strangely soothed by the innocent touch, knelt slowly, meeting the child's gaze at eye level. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a fragile acknowledgement of the unexpected connection. The boy, bolder now, stepped closer, his thumb in his mouth, his eyes wide as he studied her. They saw not a rival, but a new, intriguing face, a presence that held a quiet strength, an unyielding aura that perhaps resonated with something deep within them. As she knelt, the mare grew more agitated. It pulled harder at its tether, letting out a series of low, rumbling whinnies, its hooves pawing at the dirt. It strained against the rope, its entire being seemingly directed towards the freedwoman. Marcus, seeing this, frowned. "She's never like this," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else, a note of bewilderment in his voice. The other woman, silent and uncomfortable, watched the scene unfold, her discomfort growing with each passing moment. The subtle shift was undeniable. The children and the horse, unburdened by societal expectations or marital deception, were drawn not to the familiar, but to the truth that radiated from the freedwoman, a quiet, undeniable magnetism that spoke louder than any words. Their choice, though not yet fully articulated, was already beginning to manifest in these small, profound gestures. The children's innocent gaze, the horse's insistent whinny, pulled the freedwoman back through the corridors of time to another day, another bond forged not in blood, but in unspoken understanding. She remembered the stable, a place of quiet refuge from the relentless sun, and the mare, then a skittish, half-wild creature, newly acquired by Marcus. He had intended to break her, to bend her will to his, but the mare had resisted, her spirit fiery, untamed. It was the freedwoman who had spent hours in the dusty confines, speaking in soft murmurs, her hands gentle as she offered handfuls of sweet hay. She knew what it felt like to be reined in, to have one's spirit threatened with breaking, and so she approached the animal with a different kind of understanding, a quiet empathy that transcended words. The mare, sensing this kinship, had gradually yielded, not to domination but to trust. Their bond had formed slowly, deliberately, a silent covenant between two souls who understood the nuanced language of freedom and captivity. She remembered the children, too, before they were old enough to comprehend the world's cruelties, before the other woman had become a permanent fixture in Marcus's life. She had been the one to soothe their scraped knees, to tell them stories by the flickering lamplight, her voice a low, melodic hum that lulled them into slumber. Their mother had passed years ago, leaving them adrift, and it was the freedwoman, herself an orphan of circumstance, who had stepped into the void, offering a warmth and stability that their busy, often distant father could not. She taught the little girl to braid wildflowers into her hair, showed the boy how to skip stones across the creek, and their laughter, bright and unburdened, had been the sweetest music she had ever heard. She had shared their triumphs, however small, and gently dried their tears. She had nurtured them not out of obligation, but out of a deep wellspring of affection that surprised even herself. They were her chosen family, the delicate threads woven into the tapestry of her fragile future with Marcus. These were not casual acts of kindness. They were the foundations of a profound connection, built brick by gentle brick, through shared laughter and quiet understanding. She had witnessed their first hesitant steps, celebrated their childish discoveries, offered comfort in their fleeting sorrows. Their eyes, now fixed on her, held the unshakable memory of those moments, a recognition that went deeper than words or social constructs. They had absorbed her essence, the quiet strength that had sustained her through a life of unremitting struggle, the unwavering compassion that she had extended to them without reservation. The mare's agitated movements, the children's brave approach, these were not random occurrences. They were the visible manifestations of bonds forged in truth and genuine affection, bonds that now stood in stark contrast to the hollow promises and deceit that Marcus had woven around his own life. The past, in this moment, was not just memory, it was a living, breathing testament, silently pleading its case. The subtle shift in allegiances rippled through the yard, creating a visible fissure in the deceptive calm. Marcus, his face now a thundercloud of frustration and simmering anger, attempted to regain control. He reached for the little girl, his hand hovering, but she instinctively shrank back, her gaze still fixed on the freedwoman. "Children, go inside." His voice was strained, an order rather than an invitation. The words hung heavy in the air, weighted with an authority that suddenly felt hollow, an echo of a power he no longer fully possessed in this unexpected confrontation. The boy, sensing his father's agitation, clutched his sister's hand, both looking from Marcus to the freedwoman, their small bodies a barometer of the shifting emotional currents. They made no move to obey. The other woman, her presence a silent testament to the uncomfortable truth, remained by the porch, her discomfort palpable. She was caught between the man she had chosen and the raw, undeniable force of a history she had ignored. Her eyes darted, hesitant, seeking some resolution, but finding none. Society, with its rigid expectations and unspoken rules, demanded that the freedwoman retreat, that she quietly absorb the blow and disappear, leaving the established order undisturbed. But something within her, a newly awakened resolve, refused. She stood her ground, her posture unwavering, a quiet defiance emanating from her very being. The pain was still a searing ember in her chest, but it fueled a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The mare, meanwhile, continued its restless movements, its eyes bright with an almost human understanding. It whinnied again, a deep, resonant sound. Then, with a sudden, powerful lunge, snapped its tether. The rope, worn by time and weather, gave way with a sharp crack, freeing the animal. Marcus gasped, startled by the sudden rebellion. The mare, unburdened, took a few steps, then trotted purposefully towards the freedwoman, its head held high. It lowered its powerful neck, nudging her gently with its muzzle, a gesture of profound affection and unwavering loyalty. The children, witnessing this extraordinary display, gasped, their eyes wide with wonder. This was no ordinary animal. It was a creature of fierce loyalty, a mirror to the quiet spirit it had chosen to embrace. The unspoken choice of the mare and the children created an undeniable divide. Marcus saw it, a chasm opening at his feet, threatening to swallow not just his deceit, but the fragile illusion of his control. His anger flared, momentarily eclipsing his fear. "What have you done?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous, directed at the freedwoman. But her gaze remained steady, fixed not on him, but on the children who now stood closer to her, their small hands reaching out to touch the mare's silky mane. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken accusations and the undeniable truth of a bond forged in love, not obligation, a bond that now stood in stark, irrefutable opposition to his betrayal. The lines were drawn, not with words, but with the silent, powerful allegiances of innocent souls. The final confrontation erupted not in shouts, but in a tense, simmering quietude, a dramatic crescendo built on fractured trust and exposed lies. Marcus, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and desperation, strode towards the freedwoman, his hand raised as if to grab her. But the mare, sensing the threat, shifted its weight, placing its broad flank between them, a living, breathing shield. Its deep whinny was not a plea, but a warning, a powerful declaration of protection. The children, startled by their father's sudden aggression, instinctively pressed closer to the freedwoman, their small hands clutching at her skirt, their faces buried in the fabric. They were a unified front, an undeniable testament to her nurturing spirit, a visible manifestation of their unwavering choice. "This is my home. These are my children." Marcus's voice, though low, vibrated with a desperate, wounded pride. He was trying to assert a claim that was crumbling before his very eyes. The other woman, finally breaking her silence, stepped forward, her voice a hushed plea. "Marcus, stop. Look at them." Her words, though quiet, carried a surprising weight, a fragile attempt at reason in the escalating madness. But he was beyond reason, caught in the suffocating grip of his own unraveling. He saw only betrayal, not the consequence of his own actions. The freedwoman, her gaze unwavering, finally spoke, her voice still a quiet murmur, but imbued with a power that vibrated through the air. "They are choosing their truth, Marcus, not yours." Her words were not an accusation, but a simple, profound statement of undeniable fact. She did not raise her voice, did not resort to histrionics. Instead, her quiet dignity, her unyielding resolve, stood in stark contrast to his blustering rage. She looked at the children, her eyes filled with a deep, boundless affection. "Are you well, my loves?" she whispered, her hand gently stroking the little girl's hair. The girl nodded, sniffling, her grip on the freedwoman's skirt tightening. The boy looked up, his thumb still in his mouth, a silent plea for reassurance in his eyes. The pivotal moment arrived, not with a roar, but with a whisper. The freedwoman, her heart heavy but resolute, made her choice. She knew she could not stay, not where her dignity was compromised, where her trust had been so cruelly betrayed. But she also knew she could not abandon the vulnerable souls who had, in this very moment, chosen her. She looked at Marcus, her eyes holding a lifetime of sorrow but also a newfound strength. "I will go," she stated, her voice clear, decisive. "But I will not go alone. Not if they choose otherwise." She glanced at the children, then at the mare. It was a challenge, a painful truth laid bare. Marcus, faced with the undeniable reality of his children's affection and his horse's loyalty, a direct consequence of his deceit, faltered. He saw their desperate clinging to her, their fear of him, and the stark, inescapable truth crashed down upon him. He had lost far more than a lover. He had lost the very heart of his home. His face crumpled, stripped bare of all pretense, revealing the raw, ugly truth of a man who had squandered all that was truly precious. The silence that followed the freedwoman's words was thick with the weight of shattered illusions and dawning realities. Marcus stood frozen, a statue of regret, watching as the children, his own flesh and blood, remained steadfastly by the freedwoman's side. The mare, its head still resting protectively near her shoulder, seemed to mirror their unspoken allegiance. There was no argument, no plea, for what could he say against the undeniable truth of a child's outstretched hand, or a loyal animal's unwavering presence? He had built a life on shaky ground, and now the tremors of his own deceit had caused it to crumble, leaving him standing amidst the ruins. The other woman, perhaps seeing the futility of her own position, quietly retreated to the porch, her face a mask of sorrow and understanding. Her dream of a simple life with Marcus dissolved into the harsh light of an uncomfortable dawn. The freedwoman, with a quiet strength that belied her weary heart, began to move. She did not rush, did not look back at Marcus, her attention fixed on the small hands clutching her skirt. Her journey had led her here, not to a promised home, but to a profound revelation. True family was not always found in blood or in sworn vows, but in the depths of shared connection and unconditional love. She gathered the children gently, one on each side, their small bodies pressing against her, a comforting warmth. The mare, with an almost human understanding, turned and began to walk slowly towards the dusty road, its powerful frame a silent sentinel, leading them away from the wreckage of Marcus's lies. It was a procession of quiet dignity, a testament to choices made not in anger but in the profound space of love. Marcus remained rooted to the spot, watching them go. His homestead, once a symbol of his aspirations, now seemed hollow, echoing with the silence of absence. The sun dipped lower, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored the twisted reality of his decisions. He was left with the empty space, the ghost of a future he had so carelessly discarded, and the painful knowledge that the very core of his existence had chosen another. The irony was brutal. He, a freeman, had held others captive with his lies, only to find himself utterly alone, stripped of the very bonds he had claimed to value. The children, his children, walked away, choosing the quiet strength of the freedwoman over the hollow promises of their father. The mare, a creature of intuition, had recognized where true loyalty lay. For the freedwoman, each step away from that place was an act of liberation, not just from Marcus's betrayal, but from the lingering shadows of her past. She carried with her not bitterness, but a profound sense of purpose. The children's small hands in hers, the gentle presence of the mare at her side, were not burdens but gifts, unexpected blessings found in the crucible of despair. The road ahead was uncertain, perhaps even more so than the one she had traveled to reach Marcus, but she no longer walked alone. She had found a new kind of freedom, one forged in the fires of adversity, guided by the quiet, unwavering allegiance of two small souls and a noble creature. The past was a wound, but the future, though undefined, held the fragile, precious seeds of a new beginning, a chosen path. The road stretched out before them, an endless ribbon of red earth under a sky that slowly transformed from the fierce orange of sunset to the deep star-dusted velvet of night. The freedwoman walked with a newfound lightness, a strength that emanated not from her muscles, but from the depths of her spirit. The children, tired but content, their initial apprehension replaced by a quiet trust, nestled against her sides, their small hands still tightly clasped in hers. The mare, a silent, loyal companion, ambled steadily beside them, its rhythmic hooves a comforting cadence against the hush of the evening. They were no longer a broken family, but a new constellation, forged in the crucible of betrayal and bound by an undeniable, unspoken affection. The air, crisp with the scent of pine and distant campfires, felt cleaner, purer, unburdened by the deceit they had left behind. She looked down at the children, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the emerging moon. Their innocence, though momentarily shadowed by the day's events, was still vibrant, capable of finding joy in the smallest things. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, perhaps even more formidable than those she had already overcome. Finding a new place, securing sustenance, building a life from nothing. These were daunting prospects for a lone freedwoman, even more so with 2 children and a horse in tow. Yet, a quiet resolve settled within her, a bedrock of determination that had been tempered by a lifetime of hardship. This was not a flight of fancy, but a purposeful journey towards a truly independent existence, one built on the foundation of genuine connection and honest labor. The horse nudged her hand, a soft, encouraging gesture. Its presence was a powerful symbol. Strength, loyalty, freedom from the confines of human deceit. It represented the wild, untamed spirit that resonated deeply within her own soul, a spirit that refused to be broken, refused to be confined by the expectations or betrayals of others. This was not the future she had envisioned, not the gentle domesticity promised by Marcus, but it was a future of her own making, a future imbued with a profound and unexpected sense of purpose. The bitterness of the betrayal still lingered, a phantom ache, but it was now overshadowed by the quiet triumph of choice, the undeniable truth of a bond that transcended ownership and obligation. As the first stars glittered in the vast expanse above, she felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a hope that was not naive, but grounded in the raw, beautiful reality of her present. She had lost a dream, yes, but she had gained a chosen family, a truth far more precious. The journey was long, the destination uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she truly felt free. Free from the chains of a promise, free from the burden of expectation, free to forge her own path, guided by the silent, unwavering allegiance of the children and the noble creature who had chosen her. The story of her life was still unfolding, a testament to resilience, to the enduring power of love in its purest, most unexpected forms. This was not an ending, but a profound beginning, bathed in the gentle light of a hopeful new dawn.